Hey guys, tonight you're about to discover what it was really like to be a medieval castle guard. Not the fearless knight charging into glorious battle. Not the handsome hero from movies with perfectly polished armor. Not the legendary swordsman rescuing princesses every weekend. No. You're the fellow whose biggest accomplishment today is successfully staying awake while staring at a cold stone wall for 6 straight hours. Congratulations. You have somehow landed the medieval equivalent of working security on the night shift. Except your office is freezing. Your chair doesn't exist. Your co-workers smell like wet goats, and if you accidentally fall asleep, well, there's a decent chance you'll lose your head before breakfast. So before we step through the castle gates, do me a quick favor and hit that like button if you enjoy falling asleep to history. And while you're down there, let me know in the comments. Which medieval job do you think would be worse? Castle guard, gong farmer, executioner's assistant, or royal food taster? Personally, I'm leaning toward the guy whose entire career depends on discovering poison the hard way. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe pull your blanket up just a little higher. Because tonight, you aren't watching history, you're about to live it. You wake long before dawn, not because you want to, not because you're naturally motivated, certainly not because you've had 8 refreshing hours of sleep. No. You wake because somebody is banging on a wooden door with enough enthusiasm to wake the dead. Guard! Thump. On your feet. Thump. Shift change. You briefly consider pretending you've died during the night. Sadly, that excuse probably won't work. The room around you is little more than a cramped stone chamber tucked inside one of the castle walls. Calling it a bedroom feels optimistic. It's more like a place where people temporarily stop being conscious. The ceiling drips. The straw mattress beneath you has all the comfort of stale bread. Something tiny scurries across your ankle. You don't investigate. Experience has taught you that knowing exactly which creature just touched your foot rarely improves your morning. You sit up. Every muscle complains. Yesterday you climbed hundreds of narrow spiral stairs, carrying weapons that together weigh almost as much as a modern washing machine. Your knees feel twice their age. Your shoulders ache. Your back has quietly declared independence from the rest of your body. Welcome to another exciting day of guarding people who sleep in considerably nicer rooms than you do. The irony isn't lost on you. The lord of the castle sleeps beneath embroidered blankets stuffed with feathers. You sleep beside a bucket. Guess which one you'll probably need first. The air smells unmistakably medieval. Smoke, damp stone, sweat, wet wool, old leather, animal manure drifting in from the courtyard. A hint of stale ale, and somewhere, always, the unmistakable reminder that castles had surprisingly few bathrooms. Hollywood usually skips that part. The movies love towering walls, fluttering banners, and heroic music. They rarely include the fact that thousands of people and animals live packed together inside enormous stone fortresses with almost no plumbing. Imagine locking several hundred people, dozens of horses, pigs, chickens, dogs, cats, blacksmiths, cooks, servants, priests, and soldiers inside what is essentially a giant stone apartment complex. Now remove electricity, remove disinfectant, remove deodorant. Congratulations, you've recreated the atmosphere. If you've ever walked past a farm immediately after rain, multiply that, then add smoke, then don't wash for a month. You're getting close. Outside, another bell rings. You have exactly enough time to throw on your clothing before someone starts questioning your commitment to employment. First comes your linen shirt. Rough, scratchy, still slightly damp from yesterday, because nothing ever dries properly inside thick stone walls. Then your wool tunic. Heavy enough to keep some warmth in, heavy enough to smell like every rainy day you've ever survived. Wool is wonderful in winter, less wonderful once you've been sweating inside it for 12 hours. Next come your hose, essentially medieval trousers. If trousers were invented by someone who disliked comfort, you pull leather boots over sore feet. They're sturdy, mostly waterproof. Occasionally. They're also excellent at trapping yesterday's sweat, a luxury no one requested. You splash icy water across your face from a wooden basin. It isn't refreshing. It feels like being personally insulted by winter. Bathing, despite popular myths, wasn't completely unknown in medieval Europe. People washed when they could. Hands, faces, sometimes entire bodies. The real problem wasn't ignorance, it was practicality. Heating enough water for frequent hot baths required enormous amounts of firewood and labor. When every log had value, full baths became special occasions rather than daily routines. So yes, you smell. Everyone else does too. That actually helps. No one stands out. You reach for your belt. A small eating knife hangs from it. Not exactly a weapon, more like the medieval version of carrying a pocket knife everywhere. You'll use it to cut food, sharpen sticks, trim rope, maybe defend yourself if absolutely necessary. Mostly cheese, lots of cheese. Breakfast waits downstairs. You descend one of the castle's infamous spiral staircases. If you've ever wondered why medieval castle stairs usually twist clockwise, there's a reason. Most soldiers were right-handed. An attacker climbing upward would struggle to swing a sword because the central pillar blocked their arm. Meanwhile, defenders coming down had plenty of room to attack. It's architecture specifically designed to make invading your workplace even more unpleasant, assuming you don't trip first. The stairs are uneven, narrow, worn smooth by generations of boots. One careless step, and you're tumbling down 30 feet of stone. Not exactly the glorious battlefield death promised by heroic songs. The kitchen is already awake. Huge fireplaces roar. Smoke curls toward timber beams blackened by centuries of cooking. Servants rush everywhere carrying baskets, barrels, buckets, and steaming pots. The smell is complicated. Fresh bread, if you're lucky, boiled oats, onions, wood smoke. Bacon for someone much richer than you. You receive your breakfast, a thick chunk of coarse bread. Pottage, a thin stew of oats, vegetables, perhaps beans, if fortune smiles. And weak ale, yes, ale, in the morning. Not because medieval people were constantly drunk. Small ale contained very little alcohol and was often safer to drink than questionable water sources. Think of it less as partying before sunrise, more as practical hydration with a tiny bit of fermentation. You tear into the bread. It's dense enough to qualify as construction material. Some loaves are so hard they double as plates called trenchers. After the meal, those bread plates might even be given to the poor or fed to animals. Nothing goes to waste. You chew slowly, you'll need the energy. The castle is beginning to stir. Blacksmiths light their forges. Stable boys wrestle stubborn horses. Servants sweep yesterday's mud into today's mud. Chickens wander wherever they please, apparently promoted above several human employees. A pig trots confidently across the courtyard. Nobody questions it. You, however, are questioned immediately. Late. The captain doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. One word carries enough disappointment to shrink your lifespan. You weren't actually late. You arrived exactly when ordered. But reminding him of that would only create additional opportunities for punishment. You simply nod. One of the first lessons every guard learns is that arguing with superiors is remarkably ineffective, especially when they outrank you, especially when they carry sticks. The captain begins the morning inspection. Helmet, shield, spear, sword. Everything is checked. Everything must be ready. Rust isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. A neglected weapon reflects laziness. Laziness reflects poor discipline. Poor discipline gets people killed or whipped, sometimes both. Your helmet smells like old iron and older sweat. You place it over your head. The familiar weight settles onto your neck. The world instantly becomes narrower. Vision reduced, hearing muffled, comfort abandoned. Modern construction workers complain about hard hats after 8 hours. Imagine wearing a metal bowl over your head all day, then climbing towers, carrying weapons, standing in summer heat, without air conditioning or ibuprofen. The captain walks slowly down the line. No one speaks. Even the birds seem quieter. Finally, he stops, looks at all of you, then smiles, which somehow feels worse than shouting. Long day ahead. Of course it is. It always is. You take your place as the massive wooden gates creak open with a groan that echoes across the courtyard. Beyond them stretches the waking medieval world. Mist clings to distant fields. Merchants begin arriving. Travelers approach cautiously. Pilgrims shuffle along muddy roads. Some seek shelter. Some seek business. Some seek trouble. Your job is figuring out which is which. Unfortunately, the troublemakers rarely wear helpful signs, and you've only been awake for about an hour. The miserable part has barely begun. So, you've survived breakfast, barely. Your bread didn't crack a tooth. The captain only insulted your posture twice, and nothing exploded. By medieval standards, that's already shaping up to be a remarkably successful morning. Now comes the part no bard ever bothered to sing about. Standing, just standing. If you imagined castle guards spending their days dueling villains, chasing spies through secret tunnels, or dramatically shouting, "Halt! Who goes there?" every 5 minutes, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Most days your greatest enemy is boredom. The kind of boredom that makes you wonder whether you've accidentally slipped into another dimension where time moves at the speed of cold porridge. You sling your spear over one shoulder and begin climbing. Again. Castles have an astonishing number of stairs. Every tower, every gatehouse, every wall walk, every lookout platform, stairs. Whoever designed medieval castles clearly believed leg day should never end. Round and round you climb. The narrow spiral staircase coils upward like the inside of a seashell. Your boots scrape against century-smoothed stone. The walls are damp enough to leave your fingertips wet. Tiny windows let in slivers of gray morning light. Cold air snakes through every crack. By the time you reach the top of the gatehouse, your breathing has quickened, not because you're out of shape, but because climbing 20 or 30 meters in chainmail would challenge just about anyone. You step onto the wall walk. The wind hits you first. It always does. It cuts straight through wool, through linen, through every confident thought you had about staying warm today. Castles were built to dominate the landscape. That means they sit on hills, cliffs, rocky outcrops, anywhere with a commanding view. Wonderful for spotting enemies. Terrible if you're trying to keep your ears from freezing off. You pull your cloak tighter. It helps. A little. Not enough. Stretching before you is the countryside. Morning mist drifts over fields. Tiny farmhouses dot the landscape. Smoke curls lazily from thatched roofs. Sheep graze in distant pastures, blissfully unaware that you're deeply jealous of their life choices. Honestly, a sheep has a better work-life balance than you do. Its daily schedule consists of eating grass, avoiding wolves, and occasionally being admired for its fluffy appearance. Your schedule? Stand, watch. Don't blink at the wrong moment. Try not to die. You take your assigned position between two crenellations, the alternating high and low stone blocks lining the castle wall. The high sections are called merlons. The gaps are embrasures. Those gaps let you shoot arrows or thrust spears while staying mostly protected. They also provide an excellent place for freezing winds to find every opening in your clothing. You rest one hand on your spear, the other on the rough stone beside you. It's colder than expected. Even in summer, castle stone seems to store yesterday's chill. Below, the outer gate begins to open wider. Farmers arrive with carts loaded with vegetables. A monk leads a mule carrying sacks of grain. Traveling merchants wait patiently for inspection. No one simply walks into a medieval castle, at least, no one who's invited. Every stranger is watched. Questions are asked. Goods are inspected. Taxes may be collected. Weapons are noticed. Faces remembered. A castle isn't just someone's home. It's a military headquarters, a courthouse, a warehouse, a treasury. Sometimes even a prison. Security matters. Which means you matter. At least while you're awake. The guard beside you yawns so widely you're briefly concerned his jaw may detach. His name is Thomas, or William, or Robert. Honestly, there are so many Thomases, Williams, and Roberts in this castle that people mostly identify each other by nicknames. Big Tom, Short Tom, One-Eyed Tom, Tom who fell off the wall. That last one wasn't exactly a nickname, more of a cautionary tale. He scratches his beard. You reckon it'll rain. You look at the sky. Gray, cloudy, threatening. Probably. He nods thoughtfully. Conversation over. Congratulations. You've just participated in medieval small talk. There are no smartphones, no podcasts, no books tucked into your pocket, no earbuds, no crossword puzzles, no social media, no checking the news. If you're lucky, someone nearby whistles a tune. If you're unlucky, you become intimately familiar with every individual stone in front of you. You begin naming them. That one looks vaguely like a duck. This one resembles your captain's nose. That crack over there has probably existed longer than your family line. Hours pass this way, or at least they seem to. Sunlight slowly burns away the morning fog. The fields become brighter. Children can be seen helping their parents harvest grain. A dog chases a flock of geese with more enthusiasm than success. Somewhere below, a blacksmith begins hammering. Clang, clang, clang. The rhythmic ringing echoes across the courtyard all morning. It's oddly comforting until you've heard it for 6 hours. Then it starts living inside your skull. You shift your weight. Immediately the captain appears. How? No one knows. He possesses the supernatural ability to materialize whenever a guard becomes even slightly comfortable. Stand straight. You were, apparently not straight enough. You correct your posture. He walks away. 5 minutes later, your feet begin aching again. Standing motionless for hours sounds easy until you actually try it. Modern museum guards, security officers, and soldiers will tell you the same thing. It's exhausting. Not because you're constantly moving, because you're constantly not moving. Your muscles never fully relax. Your knees lock, your shoulders stiffen, your lower back starts composing angry letters to your brain. Around midday, something exciting finally happens. A cart approaches faster than expected. The driver is waving frantically. You straighten immediately. The guards below lower spears. The drawbridge rattles. Archers lean over the battlements. Adrenaline surges through your body. Bandits, raiders, enemy scouts. The driver reaches the gate, breathless, covered in dust. My pig escaped. Silence, the captain blinks. The pig. Yes. Your emergency. My pig. Another long pause. The captain slowly pinches the bridge of his nose. Somewhere behind you, one of the guards quietly mutters, I was hoping for Vikings. You were too, instead. Several soldiers spend the next half hour helping a frantic farmer locate an unusually determined pig. History isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just deeply inconvenient livestock, and yet, moments like this matter. Because every unexpected arrival must be treated seriously. One careless assumption could mean opening the gates to spies, or assassins, or an enemy disguised as a harmless merchant. Medieval warfare relied heavily on deception. Castles often fell not because walls were weak, but because someone inside trusted the wrong person. Which is why your captain remains suspicious of practically everyone, including people he's known for years, especially people bringing gifts. No one likes surprise barrels. The afternoon grows warmer, much warmer. Remember that lovely chainmail? The thousands upon thousands of tiny interlocking iron rings. It's now functioning as a portable oven. Heat builds beneath it. Sweat trickles down your neck. Your padded gambeson underneath begins absorbing every drop. Contrary to popular belief, chainmail isn't impossibly heavy. A full mail shirt often weighed around 10 to 15 kilograms, roughly comparable to a modern soldier's body armor. The problem isn't only the weight, it's wearing it. For hours, while climbing stairs. In summer, without modern breathable fabrics, you'd happily trade your kingdom for a fan. If you had a kingdom, which you definitely don't. A fly lands on your nose. You ignore it. The captain is watching. The fly returns. It invites several friends. Soon your face has become the hottest new destination in the insect kingdom. You remain perfectly still. Inside your mind, however, you're declaring war. Finally, the relief guard appears. Never has another human looked so beautiful. He grins. You look awful. You smell worse. Fair. The exchange is oddly heartwarming. Friendship in the Middle Ages often sounded like mutual insults. You descend the stairs carefully. Your legs feel strangely rubbery after standing so long. Each step reminds you that gravity has been patiently waiting all day to embarrass you. Back in the courtyard, life continues without pause. Servants haul water from the well. Children chase chickens. Dogs bark at absolutely nothing. The cook is yelling because someone burned the onions. Again, the blacksmith is still hammering. Clang, clang, clang. You suddenly realize something. The castle never really rests. Someone is always awake. Someone is always cooking, always repairing, always cleaning, and always watching. A medieval castle isn't simply a fortress. It's a living machine, thousands of moving parts. And you're one very tired cog. You glance up toward the towering walls you've just left behind. Another guard has already taken your place, standing exactly where you stood, watching the same road, feeling the same wind, wondering if time has stopped. Because in many ways, for a castle guard, it almost has. Now that you've survived the endless watch without freezing solid, falling asleep, or accidentally declaring war on an innocent pig, it's time for something the captain insists is good for morale. He calls it training. You will probably call it something else. So, you made it through your shift on the walls. Congratulations! You successfully watched absolutely nothing happen for several hours. Your reward? More work. If you thought you'd finally get to sit down, that's adorable. Nobody told you. The Middle Ages have a strict no fun allowed policy. You barely make it halfway across the courtyard before a familiar voice cuts through the noise. Training yard, 5 minutes. It's the captain. Of course it is. He has an uncanny ability to appear precisely when hope begins to bloom. You briefly consider hiding inside a hay cart. Unfortunately, everyone knows your boots stick out. Besides, hay has an unfortunate habit of containing mice, and judging by yesterday's surprise visitor in your mattress, you've already reached your weekly rodent quota. You sigh, then head toward the training ground. The training yard occupies a broad section of the inner bailey. If you've imagined a polished arena where noble knights gracefully duel beneath fluttering banners, think again. This place is mostly dirt, mud, scattered straw, splintered wooden targets, broken practice weapons, and enough sweat soaked into the ground to qualify as a new ecosystem. The smell arrives before you do. Fresh earth, horse manure, coal smoke drifting from the forge, old leather, human sweat, lots and lots of human sweat. If medieval castles had candles with scents, this one would be called eau de regret. Around you, guards gather in loose lines. Some stretch sore shoulders, others quietly adjust armor straps. One unlucky fellow is trying to remove a pebble from his boot without attracting the captain's attention. He fails. "You planning to fight the French, E?" the captain barks. "Or that stone?" The yard erupts with restrained laughter. Even the victim smiles. A little. Humor is one of the few luxuries poor soldiers can actually afford. Before we go any further, let's clear up one of Hollywood's favorite misunderstandings. You're not a knight, not even close. Knights belong to a tiny elite. They spend years training from childhood. They ride expensive war horses, wear beautifully crafted armor, own land, carry family coats of arms. People write poems about them. You're a castle guard. You're somewhere between professional soldier and security staff. Your equipment belongs to the Lord. Your paycheck isn't impressive, and if someone writes a song about you, it's probably because you dropped your spear into the moat. Most castle guards came from ordinary backgrounds. Some had military experience. Others learned after joining the garrison. A few hoped years of loyal service might eventually improve their lives. Most simply hoped to survive until payday. The weapons master strolls into the yard carrying a long ash spear. He notices several younger guards admiring their swords. He smiles. Never trust a smiling instructor. Without warning, he points toward one eager recruit. You. The young man steps forward proudly. "Sword?" "Yes, sir." The instructor tosses him a blunt practice blade. Then he raises his own spear. "Ready?" The recruit nods confidently. 5 seconds later, he's lying flat on his back, wondering what just happened. The instructor never let him get close enough to swing. The spear kept him at a distance the entire time. He taps the recruit's helmet with the wooden shaft. Again. History has a funny way of disappointing action movies. Everyone dreams about swords. But throughout much of history, spears won battles. They're cheaper, longer, easier to learn, and remarkably effective. If someone with a spear knows what they're doing, closing the distance becomes very difficult, as one Roman writer supposedly observed many centuries earlier. A pointy stick remains surprisingly persuasive. Naturally, now it's your turn. Someone hands you a practice spear. It feels familiar. Heavy, but balanced. The shaft is smooth from years of use. Tiny dents tell stories you'll never know. You're paired against a god named Hugh, or maybe Hugo. Everyone calls him Ox, mostly because he has approximately the same dimensions as one. He's built like a medieval wardrobe. The captain raises a hand. Begin! Ox lunges immediately. You barely react in time. Your spear collides with his. Wood cracks together with a loud tack. You stumble backward. Your boots slide in the mud. Wonderful. Nothing improves balance quite like standing in wet clay. You jab forward, miss. Ox grins. He sweeps low. You hop backward, almost gracefully, until your heel finds a puddle. Down you go, flat. The entire yard erupts into laughter. Even you can't help smiling. It's better than pretending that didn't happen. The captain strolls over, looks down at you. You planning to defend the castle from down there? No, sir. Excellent. Then stand up. You do, slowly. Your dignity remains somewhere in the mud. Next comes archery. Finally, something you've actually been looking forward to. How difficult can it be? Pull string, aim, release. Right? Wrong. Very wrong. The longbow resting in your hands feels alive. The wood resists every movement. Drawing it requires muscles you weren't entirely sure you possessed. Your shoulders protest. Your back tightens. The string finally reaches your cheek. You aim carefully. Breathe. Release. The arrow shoots, beautifully, into the grass several yards short of the target, somewhere behind you. Someone politely coughs. It sounds suspiciously like laughter. A veteran archer steps beside you. You're using your arms. What should I use? Your back, he demonstrates. Suddenly the motion looks effortless. Of course it does. He's been doing this for 20 years. You try again. This time the arrow actually reaches the target. It doesn't hit the center, or even the outer rings, but technically, it strikes wood. Progress. Historical records suggest experienced English longbowmen could loose astonishing numbers of arrows each minute. But that level of skill demanded years, often decades of practice beginning in childhood. Their skeletons even changed from repeated use. Modern archaeologists have found asymmetrical shoulder bones on medieval archers, evidence of the incredible physical strain. In other words, your sore shoulders tomorrow are historically accurate. The afternoon's final lesson involves armor. Several suits are laid across wooden benches, mail shirts, helmets, padded gambesons, shields. One wealthy sergeant even owns pieces of plate armor. The younger guards gather around it with obvious admiration. It gleams in the sunlight. Beautifully crafted, expensive. The captain notices. You think armor makes you unbeatable? Nobody answers. He picks up a helmet, drops it onto the ground. It clangs loudly. Dent this. One guard steps forward with a practice axe. He swings. The helmet survives. Barely scratched. Impressive. The captain nods. Now wear it all day. Silence. Armor protects. It also exhausts. Mail pulls constantly on your shoulders. Helmets restrict hearing. Visors reduce vision. Leather straps rub your skin raw. By sunset, your neck feels 2 inches shorter. Protection always comes at a price. Even wealthy knights understood that. For gods like you, there is no choice. Better uncomfortable than dead. Usually. As the sun begins sinking lower, the captain gathers everyone together. You've trained. He pauses. You've stumbled. Another pause. You've embarrassed yourselves. Several guards glance knowingly toward you. Thanks. I like that. A few confused smiles appear. Because the training yard is where mistakes belong, his expression grows serious. Out there, he points beyond the walls. You only get one mistake. Silence settles over the yard. No jokes now, no laughter, just the distant cry of a hawk circling high above the fields. For the first time today, you remember why all of this matters. The endless drills, the aching shoulders, the bruises, the captain's impossible standards. One day, bandits might appear on the road, a rival lord might lay siege, raiders might test the walls. And when that happens, nobody will care how tired you are. Nobody will ask whether your boots fit comfortably. Nobody will postpone the attack until after you've had lunch. The enemy arrives whenever they please. Your preparation has to happen long before that day. The captain dismisses everyone. You lean your spear against your shoulder. Your arms feel like wet noodles. Your legs resemble someone else's entirely. Every joint has developed a fascinating new language of creaks and complaints. And yet, the day still isn't over. Because while you've spent the afternoon practicing for battles that may never come, the most difficult shift of all is just beginning. Night. The darkness belongs to thieves, to spies, to desperate men, and unfortunately, to night. It belongs to you. So, training is finally over. Your shoulders ache. Your hands are blistered. Your legs feel as though they've been replaced with sacks of damp flour. Naturally. It's time for the night shift, because medieval management firmly believes that exhaustion builds character. You briefly wonder if the captain has ever heard of something called rest. He probably has. He just doesn't approve of it. You tighten your belt, pull your wool cloak around your shoulders, and pick up your spear once more. The sun has vanished. The world has changed. Castles look impressive during the day. At night, they become something else entirely. The cheerful bustle of merchants and servants fades away. The courtyard empties. The blacksmith's hammer finally falls silent. Smoke from the kitchens drifts lazily into the cool evening air. The only sounds now are the crackling of torches, the occasional snort of a horse in the stables, and your own boots echoing against ancient stone. If you've ever visited an old castle after dark, you know the feeling. Every corridor seems longer, every doorway darker, every staircase just a little more unsettling. Now imagine you're standing there, with no electric lights, no flashlights, no security cameras, no emergency exits, just darkness, and whatever might be hiding inside it. Today, darkness is mostly an inconvenience. You reach for your phone, switch on the flashlight. Problem solved. The Middle Ages don't offer that luxury. Night changes everything. Visibility drops to almost nothing. Travel becomes dangerous. Roads disappear beneath the darkness. Forests transform into black walls of uncertainty. Even familiar places suddenly feel unfamiliar. Your world shrinks to whatever the nearest torch happens to illuminate. Everything beyond that is mystery, and human imagination has always been remarkably good at filling mysterious places with terrifying possibilities. Ghosts, demons, witches, bandits, wolves, or perhaps, worst of all, the captain making another surprise inspection. Honestly, that one is statistically more likely. A young servant follows behind carrying a bundle of fresh torches. He can't be older than 13. His face is smudged with soot. His tunic is several sizes too big. One by one, he replaces dying flames with new ones. Each torch sputters, crackles, then bursts into warm orange light. The flames dance wildly whenever the wind gusts across the walls. The smell is unmistakable. Burning pitch, pine resin, hot smoke, melted tallow from nearby candles. It's comforting, until the wind changes direction. Then, it feels like the torch has personally declared war on your eyes. Smoke pours straight into your face. You cough. The torch continues burning, entirely unconcerned with your suffering. With a deep groan, the great wooden gates begin to swing shut. Massive oak beams reinforced with iron slowly seal the castle from the outside world. The sound echoes across the valley. Thud. Then comes the heavy locking bar. Several men lift it together. It slides into place with a satisfying boom. For tonight, no one enters, no one leaves. Well, no one should. Closing the gates each evening wasn't just tradition, it was survival. A castle's greatest strength lay in controlling access. Once darkness fell, opening those gates became a serious decision. Late travelers sometimes found themselves spending uncomfortable nights outside the walls simply because arriving after sunset made everyone suspicious. Harsh? Perhaps. Safer? Usually. If someone knocked after dark claiming to be a lost merchant, you didn't simply smile and wave them in. That merchant might have 20 armed friends hiding beyond the trees. History contains more than a few stories of castles falling because someone trusted the wrong stranger. Your captain has absolutely no intention of becoming one of those stories. You climb back onto the wall walk. The countryside has vanished, where fields stretched beneath the afternoon sun. Now there is only darkness. The moon hangs low behind drifting clouds. Its pale light washes over the landscape, turning everything silver and black. Trees sway gently in the wind. Except, did that one just move? You squint. No. Probably not. Probably. Your eyes begin playing tricks on you almost immediately. That bush looks like a crouching man. That rock resembles a wolf. That shadow definitely wasn't there a moment ago, or was it? Human vision isn't particularly impressive in low light. Your brain compensates by making educated guesses. Sometimes those guesses are hilariously wrong. Sometimes they're terrifying. A twig snaps somewhere below. You freeze. Another snap. Your grip tightens around the spear. Slowly, carefully. You lean between the crenellations. Nothing, just a deer wandering near the edge of the forest. It lifts its head, looks directly toward the castle, then calmly continues eating. You exhale. The guard beside you chuckles. First week. No. Could have fooled me. You roll your eyes. Easy for him to laugh. He's only mistaken 3 cows for enemy cavalry this month. Hours pass, slowly, painfully, and that's when your greatest opponent finally arrives. Not bandits, not spies, not invading armies. Sleep. It begins innocently enough. Your eyelids feel a little heavier. You blink more often. The torchlight becomes strangely hypnotic. Flames sway gently in the breeze, back and forth. and forth. The wind hums softly across the battlements. Your stomach is full enough. The night is quiet. Your body remembers the pre-dawn wake-up call. It would very much like to stop being awake now, unfortunately. Your captain disagrees. Modern science tells us that the human body naturally experiences dips in alertness during the night, especially in the early hours before dawn. Now imagine fighting that biological rhythm without coffee, without energy drinks, without bright electric lighting, just cold air and sheer determination. No wonder medieval records occasionally mention guards falling asleep on duty. It happened because they're human. The punishment, however, could be severe. Depending on the place and the period, sleeping while on guard duty could lead to whipping, imprisonment, loss of wages, or even execution during wartime. When everyone inside the walls depends on you staying awake, the stakes are painfully high. So, you invent little games. Count the stars, count the towers, count how many times Thomas yawns. You've reached 73. You wonder if he's trying to inhale the moon, even at midnight. The castle isn't completely silent. Far below, you hear footsteps, a servant carrying water, someone coughing, a baby crying somewhere in the servants' quarters, a horse stamping impatiently in the stable, the distant clatter of pots being cleaned. Life continues, just more quietly. Then, the chapel bell rings. A lone monk crosses the courtyard carrying a lantern. Its tiny flame glows like a floating star. Monasteries and castle chapels often held prayers throughout the day, and sometimes during the night. While you're scanning the darkness for enemies, someone else is praying for everyone's safety, including yours. You find that oddly comforting. For about 10 seconds. Then another owl screeches from the forest. You nearly drop your spear. Owls have an extraordinary talent for sounding either profoundly wise or like someone being dramatically murdered. Tonight, it's the second one. Just after midnight, you hear it. Hoofbeats, faint, rhythmic, approaching. Every guard on the wall stiffens instantly. The captain appears almost magically beside the gatehouse. I hear it too! The hoofbeats grow louder. One horse. No, two. No, just one. The echoes are playing tricks. A lantern is raised. You peer into the darkness. Finally, a rider emerges from the trees. Alone, hands visible, no weapon drawn. He stops well beyond bow range. Smart man. Who goes there? The captain shouts. The rider raises one hand. Messenger from Lord Ashcombe. Proof? The rider slowly removes a wax-sealed letter from beneath his cloak. No sudden movements, no heroics, no clever speeches. Everything is deliberate, because everyone involved understands one thing. Nervous guards with loaded crossbows are not people you wish to surprise. The captain studies the seal from above. He doesn't rush. He doesn't assume. He asks questions. Several. Only after a lengthy exchange does he order the small postern gate opened. Not the main gate. Never the main gate. The messenger is admitted alone. His horse remains outside until morning. Even trusted visitors receive cautious treatment at night. Security isn't about assuming people are dangerous. It's about assuming mistakes can be fatal. The hours between 2 and 5 in the morning are the hardest. The temperature drops. The wind sharpens. Your fingers go numb despite your gloves. Moisture settles on your cloak. Tiny droplets cling to your beard. You stamp your feet quietly to keep blood flowing. Every breath becomes visible. The stars seem brighter now, beautiful. In a deeply uncomfortable sort of way. You glance east, still dark. Surely sunrise must be close. It isn't. Time has once again decided to crawl. You begin bargaining with the heavens. If the sun could just hurry up, you promise never to complain about daylight again. It's a promise you'll break by next Tuesday. Then, at last, the eastern horizon softens. Not bright, just less black. Birdsong begins. One lone robin, then another. The world slowly returns. You survived. No raids, no assassins, no ghosts, just cold, exhaustion, and approximately 400 imaginary enemies created by your own sleep-deprived brain. Not exactly the glorious tale minstrels sing about. But perhaps far more realistic. You hand your spear to the morning relief guard. He smiles far too cheerfully. You look terrible. So will you, he nods. Fair enough. You shuffle toward the barracks. Your feet ache. Your eyes burn. Your entire body feels wrapped in wet wool and regret. Behind you, the castle awakens once more. Another day begins. For everyone else, for you, the only thing on your mind is sleep. Unfortunately, a medieval castle has an astonishing talent for making sure even that simple dream rarely lasts long. So, you survived the night watch. Barely. Your eyes feel like someone filled them with sand. Your neck has developed a fascinating new inability to turn left. Your feet have completely forgotten what happiness feels like. Naturally, you assume you'll finally get some sleep. The castle has other ideas. A stable boy runs past, nearly colliding with you. A cook is yelling because someone has stolen an onion. 2 geese are somehow chasing a priest. A blacksmith has already resumed hammering. Clang. There it is, the soundtrack of your life. You've heard that hammer so often you're beginning to suspect it's keeping time for the universe itself. Sleep can wait. First, you need food. And if Hollywood has taught you anything, you're probably expecting towering tables piled high with roasted boar, golden goblets overflowing with wine, steaming pies, mountains of cheese, and cheerful musicians playing lutes while everyone laughs. That certainly happened for the Lord. Perhaps his honored guests, maybe the bishop if he was visiting. You? You're about to experience medieval cuisine from the employee cafeteria. Lower your expectations, lower them further, a little more. Perfect. The castle kitchens are already roaring with activity. This is one of the busiest places inside the entire fortress. Several enormous fireplaces dominate the room. Iron cauldrons hang over open flames. Servants hurry back and forth carrying baskets of vegetables, sacks of grain, barrels of ale, and enough firewood to heat a small village. The room is hot, uncomfortably hot, especially after spending all night shivering on the walls. The heat slaps you in the face the moment you step inside. For one glorious second, it feels wonderful. Then the smoke reaches your eyes. You cough. Welcome indoors. The smell is overwhelming. Fresh bread, boiling cabbage, leeks, garlic, onions, beef broth, wet ashes, burning oak, grease. And somewhere, definitely, someone has burned something. Again. The head cook notices immediately. You look behind you. No one else. Wonderful. Take these. He hands you 2 enormous sacks of barley. You blink. I thought breakfast was ready. It is. So, you carry first. Ah, yes, the medieval version of earning your meal. Eventually, after proving your worth as unpaid kitchen labor, you finally receive breakfast, or lunch. Honestly, medieval meal times don't always fit neatly into our modern schedule. Most ordinary people ate when work allowed. The star of today's menu, as it was yesterday, and very likely tomorrow, is pottage. Imagine the world's most determined stew. Now remove any expectation of consistency. Pottage isn't one recipe, it's a cooking method. Take a large pot, add vegetables, throw in grains, perhaps beans. Maybe herbs. If fortune smiles, add scraps of meat. If fortune beams with divine generosity, perhaps even a small piece of bacon. Then let everything simmer together for hours, sometimes days. New ingredients are added as old ones disappear. It's entirely possible you're eating vegetables that first entered the pot before yesterday's sunrise. The stew evolves continuously, like a culinary family tree or a very committed science experiment. You dip your wooden spoon into the thick mixture. Steam rises. The first bite is surprisingly comforting. Warm, earthy, filling, not exciting, not memorable, but after 16 hours of work, it tastes wonderful. Modern comfort food often relies on butter, cream, sugar, or cheese. Medieval comfort food relied on one simple principle. Beside your bowl sits another thick slice of bread. Bread wasn't merely food, it was the foundation of the medieval diet. Rich people enjoyed fine white loaves made from carefully sifted wheat. Poorer folk usually ate darker bread containing rye, barley, oats, or mixed grains. Your loaf is enthusiastic, dense enough to survive a siege, heavy enough that in an emergency you could probably throw it at an enemy. You tear off a piece, it's chewy, nutty, slightly sour, much fresher than yesterday's. A victory. You silently thank whichever baker woke even earlier than you did, which is saying something. Castle bakers worked through the night so everyone else could eat by dawn. Entire armies depended on bread. Without it, everything else falls apart, literally. As you eat, you notice something missing. Forks. Where are they? Well, mostly nowhere. Forks existed in parts of medieval Europe, but they were rare for everyday dining until much later. Most people relied on knives, spoons, and, most importantly, their fingers. Which sounds strange until you remember that pizza, burgers, tacos, and fried chicken still involve fingers today. Humanity hasn't changed quite as much as we'd like to think. You wipe your hands on a piece of bread. Yes, bread. It doubles as a napkin, eventually. You eat that too. Waste not. Want not. A younger guard reaches for a bucket of water. An older veteran gently pushes it away. Take the ale. The newcomer looks confused. But I'm thirsty. So am I. Then why not water? The veteran shrugs. Depends where it came from. This is one of history's most misunderstood topics. Contrary to popular myth, medieval people absolutely drank water when the source was clean. The trouble was, clean water wasn't guaranteed. Wells could become contaminated. Rivers carried waste from upstream settlements. Stagnant ponds were obvious disasters waiting to happen. Small ale containing very little alcohol was often a safer daily drink because brewing involved boiling the water. Nobody is getting wildly drunk before guard duty. At least, nobody who wants to keep their job. You take a long drink. It's mild, slightly sweet, refreshing. More like liquid bread than modern beer. Not glamorous, but neither are you. Suddenly, the kitchen changes. Servants begin rushing. The head cook starts shouting even louder. Large platters appear, roasted chickens, fresh fish, cheeses, honey cakes, colorful fruits, imported spices. One servant nearly drops an entire goose. What happened? The Lord has guests. Ah, that explains everything. Within minutes, the finest food in the castle disappears upstairs toward the great hall. You catch only glimpses. Golden crusts, shiny apples, perfect roasted meat glistening in candlelight. The smell alone is magnificent. You watch it vanish through the doorway. Your bowl of cabbage pottage suddenly feels less majestic. Thomas leans beside you. Think they'll have leftovers? You both look toward the stairs, then at one another. Neither of you laughs. You're genuinely hopeful. In great households, leftovers from noble tables often filtered down through servants and soldiers. Not always, but sometimes. Hope, it turns out, pairs remarkably well with boiled barley. Not every year is generous. Harvests fail, winters linger, war disrupts trade, a disease kills livestock, a storm destroys crops, medieval life balanced constantly between enough and not enough. During a siege, things become much worse. Fresh vegetables disappear first, then fruit, then meat. Eventually, even bread grows scarce. Historical accounts from prolonged sieges describe people rationing every crumb. Some communities resorted to eating horses, dogs, cats, leather softened by boiling. There are even horrifying reports, thankfully rare, of starvation driving people to cannibalism. History is full of remarkable achievements. It also contains desperate moments we'd rather forget. For now. Thankfully. Your bowl is still full. You eat every last spoonful. Not because it's delicious, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. As you leave the kitchens, your stomach feels pleasantly warm. Your nose, however, reminds you that you've stepped back into a medieval castle. Let's talk about smells. Or perhaps, let's not. Too late. You've already noticed them. The chamber pots. The livestock, the tanner curing leather, the smoke trapped inside stone buildings, the refuse pit outside the walls, the crowded sleeping quarters, hundreds of people sharing limited space. Disease loves crowded places. Without understanding bacteria or viruses, medieval people still recognized that foul air, spoiled food, and filthy surroundings often accompanied illness. They cleaned when they could, swept floors, disposed of waste, washed clothing, maintained wells, not because they understood germs, but because experience taught them that neglect usually ended badly. Even so, outbreaks happened. Dysentery, typhoid, respiratory infections, parasites. One tiny cut could become life-threatening. A toothache might eventually kill you. The human body was resilient. Medicine, less so. You glance at a fellow guard scratching beneath his collar. He's been scratching for 10 minutes. Probably lice, could be fleas. Maybe both. Nobody comments. That would be like pointing out someone has elbows. Some inconveniences are simply universal. You sit quietly on a low stone bench overlooking the courtyard. For a few precious minutes. No one is shouting. No one is ordering you anywhere. The afternoon sun feels warm against the castle walls. A dog curls up nearby and falls asleep almost instantly. Lucky creature. You envy him more than the Lord, because unlike you, he actually gets uninterrupted naps. You finish the final bite of bread, brush the crumbs from your tunic, and allow yourself one long, satisfied breath. Food doesn't solve every problem. It won't stop the cold. It won't lighten your armor. It won't make the captain any friendlier. But for a few moments, it reminds you why people endure difficult lives in the first place. To see another sunrise, to share another meal, to laugh at another terrible joke, to keep going. A castle guard doesn't expect luxury. He hopes for enough. Enough food, enough warmth, enough luck, enough tomorrows. You stand, stretch carefully. Your muscles complain immediately. There they are, right on schedule. Unfortunately, your day is far from over, because food may keep you alive. But the next lesson is all about the many inventive ways medieval life tried to kill you anyway. From infected wounds, to mysterious fevers, to surgeons whose confidence greatly exceeded their success rate. You're about to discover that surviving the battlefield was sometimes the easy part. So, you've survived another meal. Your stomach is reasonably full. Your feet have stopped complaining, mostly because they've accepted their fate. You even managed to enjoy a glorious 5 minutes sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard. You close your eyes, a warm breeze brushes across your face. Maybe, just maybe, you'll finally get some rest. Guard! There it is, the captain's voice. Louder than any church bell. You open one eye, he's standing over you with his arms folded. Were you sleeping? No, sir. What were you doing? Thinking. The captain stares at you. Try doing less of that. The guards nearby struggle heroically not to laugh. You stand up, another break successfully ruined. At this point, you're beginning to suspect the captain personally feeds on other people's disappointment. Here's something Hollywood rarely mentions. Most castle guards didn't die in glorious sword fights. In fact, many never fought a major battle at all. Instead, they faced something far more ordinary. Accidents, infections, disease, and the simple reality of living in a crowded stone fortress hundreds of years before antibiotics. Your greatest enemy today might be a splinter. Seriously, one tiny cut on your hand. Ignore it, keep working. A few days later, it's swollen. Red, hot. Then comes the fever. Suddenly, that little scratch has become a life-threatening problem. Modern medicine has spoiled us. We clean a wound, apply antiseptic, cover it with a bandage, perhaps visit a clinic if it looks nasty. A medieval castle guard? You hope someone has honey. No, really. Honey was one of the best wound treatments available. Modern science has confirmed what medieval people learned through experience. Honey has natural antibacterial properties and can help wounds heal. It wasn't magic. It wasn't perfect. But sometimes it genuinely helped. Of course, sometimes someone also recommends applying crushed snail shells, animal fat, or a mysterious herbal paste made by a local healer whose qualifications are mostly based on confidence. Medicine in the Middle Ages was a fascinating mixture of practical observation, ancient tradition, religious belief, and occasional wild guessing. You make your way toward the castle infirmary. Calling it a hospital might be a little generous. It's a modest room tucked beside the chapel. Bundles of herbs hang drying from wooden beams. Shelves hold ceramic jars labeled in faded ink. The air smells of rosemary, sage, garlic, vinegar, hot wax, and something metallic, blood. Waiting inside is the barber surgeon. If you've ever wondered why traditional barber poles have red and white stripes, there's a historical connection. Barbers didn't just cut hair. Many also performed minor surgical procedures. Pulling teeth, setting broken bones, lancing boils, treating wounds, bloodletting, and occasionally removing body parts that had become uncooperative. The barber looks up as you enter. You again? It's only a blister. He takes one glance at your palm. That was yesterday. You look down. He's right. It's no longer a blister. It's become a raw tear where your spear rubbed against your skin during training. He cleans it with wine. It stings. Actually, stings isn't quite the right word. It feels as though every angry bee in England has simultaneously decided your hand is public property. You hiss through your teeth. The barber smiles. Good. Good. If it hurts, he wraps the hand with clean linen. You're still alive. You can't really argue with that logic. Bloodletting, the universal solution. Apparently, on the next stool sits an older guard named Martin. He doesn't look happy. The barber is preparing a small knife. You raise an eyebrow. Martin sighs. Headaches. The barber nods wisely. We'll let some blood. Of course you will. Bloodletting was one of the most common medical practices throughout much of medieval Europe, based on the ancient belief that illness came from an imbalance of the body's four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. The theory, inherited from ancient Greek physicians like Galen, dominated European medicine for centuries. The treatment? Remove some blood. Headache, blood. Fever, blood. Bad mood. Believe it or not, probably blood. To be fair, physicians genuinely believed they were helping. Medical knowledge builds slowly. Every generation works with the best understanding it has. Someday, people hundreds of years from now may look back at some of our treatments and quietly whisper, "They did what?" History has a way of humbling everyone. Martin winces. You decide your sore hand suddenly feels much less important. As you leave the infirmary, you hear a scream from another room. A very specific scream. The kind that immediately tells you someone has encountered dentistry. Curiosity gets the better of you. You peek inside. A poor stable hand grips both sides of a wooden chair with white knuckles. The barber places metal tongs around a rotten tooth. No, wait. Too late. One hard pull. The tooth comes free, along with enough shouting to wake every raven for miles. The barber holds up the tooth proudly. There, the patient slumps in relief. Oddly enough, extraction was often the right treatment. Without antibiotics, an infected tooth could spread bacteria into the jaw or bloodstream. People absolutely died from dental infections. So while medieval dentistry wasn't pleasant, it sometimes saved lives. Still, you're suddenly grateful your own teeth only ache when chewing yesterday's bread. Later that afternoon, you're back in the barracks. Thomas is scratching his beard again. Actually, everyone is scratching something. Collars, sleeves, ankles, scalps. Welcome to medieval pest control. Lice thrive anywhere people live closely together. So do fleas, bed bugs, mites. They're tiny, persistent, and astonishingly confident. You inspect your blanket. Nothing obvious. That's almost worse. The things you can see aren't usually the problem. People did wash clothes when possible. They aired bedding, combed their hair, used herbal mixtures believed to discourage pests. But complete elimination? Almost impossible. Not in crowded castles. Not when dozens of men share sleeping quarters. Not when straw mattresses become little ecosystems of their own. You suddenly remember the creature that ran across your foot yesterday morning. You decide not to think about it. Some mysteries improve with age. By late afternoon, the skies finally open. Rain pours over the castle. Water streams from gargoyles. The courtyard becomes a sea of mud within minutes. Your boots sink with every step. Slop, slop, slop. Wonderful. The rain soaks your cloak, then your tunic, then your linen shirt. Finally, it reaches your skin. Cold, sticky, relentless. Stone walls darken with moisture. Wood swells, leather stiffens. Bowstrings must be kept dry. Firewood becomes precious. Even simple tasks become harder. Medieval weather wasn't merely something to complain about. It could determine whether food spoiled, Roads became impassable, or armies moved at all. Nature was often the most powerful force in any campaign. You glanced toward the gate. Several travelers who hope to continue their journey have wisely decided to wait out the storm. Nobody enjoys marching through medieval mud. It's remarkably good at swallowing boots. Just as the rain begins easing, and the chapel bell rings once, twice, 3 times. Not the usual rhythm. Something's wrong. People stop working. Conversations fade. The priest hurries across the courtyard. A servant quietly lowers her head. Thomas whispers, "Old Geoffrey." You understand immediately. One of the older guards has died, not in battle, not defending the walls. Simply gone. Perhaps illness, perhaps age, perhaps an old wound finally won. Death was an ordinary companion in medieval life, not welcomed, never ignored, but familiar. People expected to lose family members, friends, and fellow workers far more often than most of us experience today. Life was precious precisely because it was uncertain. The rain continues falling softly as several guards remove their helmets. No speeches, no dramatic music, just quiet respect. Tomorrow, another man will stand Geoffrey's watch. The walls will still need guarding. The gates will still open. Life inside the castle keeps moving. History often remembers kings, battles, great victories. But castles were truly held together by ordinary people like Geoffrey, who simply kept showing up, day after day, year after year, until one day they couldn't. You stand silently for a moment. Rain drips from the edge of your helmet. Somewhere above, the clouds begin to part. A narrow beam of sunlight slips through and briefly illuminates the highest tower. Beautiful, quiet, almost peaceful. Then the captain clears his throat behind you. Enough standing around. Of course, the moment couldn't possibly last, because tomorrow brings something every castle guard secretly dreads. Not disease, not weather, not another sleepless night. A siege, the day the walls you've spent your entire life protecting are finally put to the test, and when that happens, every miserable day you've endured suddenly makes perfect sense. You were hoping today might be different. Maybe the captain would be in a good mood. Maybe breakfast would include actual meat. Maybe nobody would ask you to climb 700 stairs before sunrise. Instead, someone on the eastern wall starts shouting, "Riders!" The word cuts through the morning air like a knife. Every conversation stops. The blacksmith freezes with his hammer halfway through a swing. Kitchen servants abandon baskets of vegetables. Dogs begin barking. Even the chickens seem offended by the interruption. You hurry toward the battlements, pulling your helmet on as you run. The strap catches your ear. Of course it does. Even your equipment has chosen violence today. By the time you reach the wall, dozens of guards are already staring toward the horizon. You squint into the morning mist. At first, nothing. Just rolling hills, fields, trees. Then, movement. Tiny dark shapes. More than one, more than 10, far too many. As the sun climbs higher, colorful banners emerge through the fog. Red, blue, gold, a forest of spears glitters beneath the growing light. The enemy has arrived. And suddenly, every miserable day you've spent freezing on these walls doesn't seem quite so pointless anymore. A castle during peacetime feels almost like a small town. A castle under siege becomes a machine. Every single person has a job. Immediately, the captain begins shouting orders. "Close the outer gate! Archers to the north wall! Move the grain inside! Get those animals through the gate! Chaos erupts. Farmers from nearby villages race toward the castle, with carts loaded high. Women carry children. Old men limp beside frightened cattle. Sheep scatter in every direction because, as always, sheep have absolutely no understanding of emergencies. One stubborn goat decides this is the perfect moment to argue with everyone. Honestly, goats would survive the apocalypse out of pure stubbornness. The drawbridge lowers one final time. Families rush across. Wagons creak beneath impossible loads. Barrels of grain, bundles of firewood, chicken cages, tools, blankets, anything useful. Everything else gets left behind. A little girl clutches a wooden doll as she looks back toward her family's farmhouse. She knows she may never see it again, neither do her parents. War isn't just soldiers, it's everyone. Now, if you're the attacking army, you have a problem. Actually, several problems. The first one is standing directly in front of an enormous wall, built specifically to ruin your day. Castle walls weren't merely tall, they were thick, very thick. Some medieval curtain walls measured over 3 meters, 10 feet across. Others were even thicker. They're built from thousands upon thousands of carefully fitted stones, packed around a core of rubble and mortar. Breaking through one isn't like smashing a movie set, it's more like trying to punch a mountain. Which is why most sieges weren't won through brute force. They were won through patience, starvation, disease, negotiation, or betrayal. In fact, many famous castles surrendered long before their walls actually failed, because people inside eventually ran out of food, or hope, or both. The captain points toward the eastern battlements. You're staying there. For how long, sir? He looks at you. Until this is over. You immediately regret asking. You climb to your assigned position. The familiar wall suddenly feels different. Yesterday, it was boring. Today, it's the only thing standing between you and several hundred armed strangers. Funny how perspective works. The enemy camp grows larger by the hour. Rows of tents spread across the fields. Smoke rises from newly lit cooking fires. Horses graze. Workers unload wagons. Carpenters immediately begin chopping timber. You know exactly why. Siege towers, battering rams, ladders, catapults. None of those build themselves. Watching an enemy prepare for war is strangely unsettling. They're eating breakfast, laughing, sharpening tools, doing ordinary things, just like you. The only difference is, tomorrow they might try to kill you. History has an uncomfortable habit of reminding us that enemies are usually just people standing on the opposite side of a field. Here's another thing Hollywood rarely gets right. Most sieges weren't constant action. There wasn't an epic battle every afternoon. Instead, you waited a lot. Days, weeks, sometimes months, occasionally even years. Imagine living at work for 6 months. Now remove internet, electricity, weekends, pizza delivery, and comfortable mattresses. Congratulations, you've invented siege duty. The first few hours are tense. Every movement outside catches your attention. Every rider sparks rumors. Do you think they'll attack today? Thomas shrugs. They'll attack eventually. Comforting, very comforting. You settle your spear against the stone. The enemy settles into their camp. Oddly enough, the waiting begins. Again. Castle guards seem to specialize in waiting. Waiting for sunrise. Waiting for orders. Waiting for meals. Waiting for sleep. Waiting for war. Sometimes, The waiting is worse than the fighting, because imagination has endless energy. Around noon, the enemy's engineers begin working. Now, these men aren't charging heroically into battle. They're builders, carpenters, rope makers, wheelwrights, the people whose inventions determine whether armies live or die. You watch enormous beams being dragged into place, hammering echoes across the valley. Slowly, a strange wooden shape begins rising. One guard beside you swallows nervously. Siege tower, another shakes his head. Ram? No. It's a tower. They continue arguing for nearly 20 minutes. Eventually, the captain settles it. It's both. Wonderful. Just wonderful. Medieval warfare depended as much on skilled craftsmen as fearless warriors. Without engineers, armies couldn't cross rivers, couldn't build bridges, couldn't construct siege engines, couldn't break walls. The man holding a hammer might be just as important as the man holding a sword. The captain gathers every available archer. Loose. A volley of arrows arcs gracefully into the empty field before the walls, not because anyone expects to hit something. Practice, distance, timing, coordination. Again. Loose! Another dark cloud fills the sky. Watching hundreds of arrows rise together is oddly beautiful, until you remember what happens when they come back down. English longbowmen, Welsh archers, Genoese crossbowmen. Different regions develop different specialties. But one truth remained constant. Missile weapons dominated medieval battlefields long before anyone reached sword range. By the time swords became useful, something had probably gone very wrong. While everyone focuses on the enemy, the castle itself continues functioning. Bread still needs baking. Water still needs hauling. Animals still require feeding. Children still cry. Someone still has to clean the latrines. Imagine trying to maintain an entire town, while expecting an invasion at any moment. One elderly woman calmly hangs laundry between two buildings. You blink. Laundry? Now? Thomas notices. She says, if she dies... He shrugs. She'd rather die wearing clean clothes. You nod thoughtfully. Honestly, that's not the worst philosophy. Nearby, a group of children has started pretending to be soldiers. One carries a stick. Another uses a wooden bucket as a helmet. They're laughing, playing, completely unaware that the adults watching them are silently wondering what tomorrow might bring. Moments like these make history feel very human. Not kings, not battles. Just families trying to live ordinary lives while extraordinary events gather outside their walls. Late that afternoon, it finally happens. An enemy rider approaches the castle under a white flag. He delivers a demand. Surrender. The captain listens patiently, then replies with remarkable politeness. No. The messenger sighs. He almost looks disappointed. As he rides away, a young soldier somewhere in the enemy camp gets impatient, perhaps nervous, perhaps foolish, perhaps eager to impress someone. He looses an arrow. It whistles through the air. Past the messenger, past the walls, past your head. Thunk. The shaft buries itself deep into the wooden gate behind you. Silence. Absolute silence. The captain slowly walks over, grips the arrow, pulls it free, looks toward the enemy camp, then calmly snaps the shaft in half. No speech, no dramatic gesture. Just one quiet message. We're not frightened. The siege has officially begun. The sun begins sinking behind the western hills. Long shadows stretch across the fields. Hundreds of campfires flicker to life beyond the walls. Inside the castle, torches answer them one by one. Two worlds now face each other across open ground, both waiting, both preparing, both wondering who will blink first. You rest your hands atop the cold stone battlements. The wall suddenly feels less like a workplace and more like the edge of your entire world. Tomorrow, those distant tents may begin moving. Tomorrow, the engines may roll forward. Tomorrow, the walls you've trusted your whole career will face their greatest test, and you'll discover something every medieval guard eventually learned. Standing watch in peace is one thing. Standing your ground while the sky fills with arrows is something else entirely. So, you were hoping yesterday's tension might simply dissolve overnight. Perhaps the enemy would wake up, decide war was expensive, pack their tents, apologize for the inconvenience, and head home. Sadly, medieval diplomacy rarely worked that way. Instead, you wake to a sound that makes every guard inside the castle sit bolt upright. Thump, not close, but close enough. A second later, another. Thump. Thomas looks at you. They've started. You don't ask what they are. You already know. The engineers worked all yesterday. Today, their machines speak. You race toward the eastern wall, helmet half-fastened, bread still in one hand. Yes, you're carrying breakfast. History is surprisingly practical. People still get hungry during invasions. The captain notices the bread. You planning to throw that at them? No, sir. Good. Looks harder than their helmets. Even now, even here, the old man finds time for sarcasm. Maybe that's how he survived so long. Or maybe sarcasm simply becomes a personality trait after 30 years of managing exhausted soldiers. You climb onto the battlements. The valley looks completely different. Yesterday, it was dotted with tents. Today, it's alive. Hundreds of soldiers are moving into formation. Archers gather behind rows of wooden stakes. Men haul thick ropes attached to enormous timber frames. Oxen strain against heavy wagons. The air is filled with shouted orders, hammer blows, whinnying horses, the creak of wheels, and somewhere, the deep groan of twisted rope. You've never heard anything quite like it. It sounds hungry. Far across the field stands a towering wooden machine. It's taller than a house. Its great throwing arm stretches toward the sky like the branch of an ancient oak. A group of men gathers around it, adjusting ropes and counterweights. You swallow. Thomas notices. First trebuchet. You nod. He smiles. You'll remember it. History often celebrates the catapult. But when people picture the most powerful siege engine of the High Middle Ages, they're usually imagining the trebuchet. Powered by a massive counterweight rather than twisted ropes, a large trebuchet could hurl enormous stones, hundreds of meters, with astonishing force. Not every army possessed one. Not every siege required one. But when they appeared, everyone noticed, because they could smash roofs, batter towers, and remind defenders that gravity has always been undefeated. The crew pulls the release. For one brief moment, nothing happens. Then, the great arm swings upward with terrifying speed. The sling snaps free. A dark shape rises into the air. It's almost graceful, almost beautiful, until you realize it's coming toward you. Someone shouts, "Stone!" Every guard ducks instinctively. The rock whistles overhead with a sound you'll never forget. Not a roar, not a scream, a strange rushing hiss, like the sky itself has taken a deep breath. The stone sails over the curtain wall, over the courtyard. Then, crash. The impact shakes the entire castle. Dust erupts into the air. Roof tiles explode in every direction. A stable wall partially collapses. Horses scream in panic. For several heartbeats, nobody moves. Then the captain bellows, "Damage report!" Everyone springs into action. You rush down from the wall. The stone has smashed through part of a storage building. Timbers lie scattered everywhere. Grain spills across the ground like golden sand. 2 servants are already digging through the wreckage. Fortunately, no one was inside. This time, you stare at the enormous rock. It isn't perfectly round. It's rough, jagged, probably quarried only days ago. A strange thought crosses your mind. Some mason spent hours shaping this. Someone loaded it onto a wagon. Someone hauled it across miles of countryside, just so it could ruin your morning. History requires an astonishing amount of planning. The captain wastes no time. Archers. Men scramble back onto the walls. Bowstrings tighten. Arrows are passed from hand to hand. You help carry bundles up the stairs, your legs already protesting. At the top, the captain raises his arm. Wait! The enemy soldiers move closer, closer, still closer. Wait! You grip the stone so tightly your knuckles ache. Finally, his arm drops. Loose. The sound is unlike anything you've ever heard. Not individual twangs. Thousands of tiny sounds blending into one. The arrows leap into the morning sky. For one breathtaking second, the sunlight catches their iron heads. They glitter like a flock of black birds. Then they disappear into the advancing ranks. You can't clearly see what happens from this distance. Only sudden confusion. Men ducking, shields rising, the formation slowing. That's enough. The captain nods. Again. Loose! Another wave, another cloud. Archers didn't always expect every arrow to find a target. Sometimes the goal was disruption. Pressure, fear, making every step toward the walls feel dangerous, even when armor stopped an arrow. The sound alone could make a soldier flinch. Then, something new. Across the field, several enemy soldiers step forward carrying crossbows. Unlike longbows, crossbows store energy mechanically. They're slower to reload, but much easier to learn. And they hit hard, very hard. One of the older guards beside you mutters quietly, "I hate crossbows." You ask why. They don't care how strong you are. He's right. A skilled longbowman spent years building the strength needed to draw a heavy bow. A crossbow lets a comparatively inexperienced soldier generate tremendous force using levers, windlasses, or cranks. Technology has always changed warfare. Not overnight, but steadily. The first bolts begin flying. They're shorter than arrows, heavier, faster. One strikes the stone merlon in front of you. Crack! Fragments of limestone sting your face. Tiny cuts bloom across your cheek. Nothing serious. Still, it's enough to remind you that stone can bite back. Now, this is where movies usually get creative. The defenders roll enormous cauldrons onto the walls. They pour rivers of boiling oil over helpless attackers. Everyone cheers. It looks spectacular. It also wasn't the everyday reality people imagine. Oil was expensive, painfully expensive. You didn't casually dump valuable cooking supplies off a castle wall unless you had plenty to spare. What defenders were far more likely to use depended on what they actually had. Stones, logs, sand heated over fires, quicklime in some circumstances, boiling water, or simply arrows. Lots and lots of arrows. History is often less dramatic than Hollywood, but no less deadly. Today, you're carrying rocks, heavy ones, each roughly the size of a melon. You stack them carefully near the battlements. Your back reminds you that lifting stones all morning wasn't included in your employment contract. Not that there is an employment contract. The next attack comes quickly. Another volley of crossbow bolts streaks toward the wall. You duck. Thomas ducks. Martin doesn't quite move fast enough. The bolt strikes his shoulder. He cries out and stumbles backward. You catch him before he falls. Blood spreads quickly across his gambeson. Not a dramatic fountain. Just a dark stain growing larger by the second. Medic, actually. Nobody says medic. They shout for the barber surgeon. Close enough. 2 guards carry Martin toward the infirmary. He's awake, talking, mostly complaining, which everyone quietly agrees is a good sign. The captain watches them disappear, then turns back toward the wall. No gaps. Martin's position is empty. You step into it. The wall must remain defended. It sounds cold. It is. But that's the brutal arithmetic of siege warfare. Every person matters. Every position matters. The enemy doesn't pause because someone got hurt. Neither can you. Hours pass. Attack. Wait. Repair. Reload. Carry arrows. Move stones. Drink a little ale. Eat cold bread. Repeat. The rhythm becomes strangely mechanical. You stop thinking in hours. You think in volleys, in horn blasts, in the number of arrows left in each barrel. Somewhere below. Carpenters are already repairing damage from the morning's bombardment. Roof beams are replaced, broken shutters fixed, rubble cleared. A castle under siege repairs itself constantly. Every night erases as much of the day's damage as possible, because tomorrow the enemy will try again. As evening settles over the battlefield, the attacks finally slow, not because anyone has surrendered, simply because fighting in darkness benefits no one. The enemy returns to their campfires. You return to yours. Both sides eat. Both sides bury their dead. Both sides sharpen weapons for another sunrise. The valley grows quiet once more. Almost. You stand atop the battlements, looking out across the flickering lights. Yesterday, those campfires looked distant, almost peaceful. Tonight, each one reminds you that someone out there is planning how to break these walls tomorrow. You rest your hands on the cold stone. For the first time since this began, you realize something. You're no longer frightened of standing watch. You're frightened of what happens if you stop. The wall beneath your fingers feels solid, ancient, reliable. You silently hope it stays that way. Because tomorrow, the enemy won't be content with throwing stones. Tomorrow, they'll come for the gates. And you'll meet the one machine every castle guard dreaded, seeing roll toward the drawbridge. The battering ram. Morning arrives. Unfortunately, you'd only just fallen asleep. Or at least, that's what it feels like. Your dreams lasted approximately 3.5 seconds before someone was pounding on the barracks door again. Guard! Thump! On your feet! Thump! The enemy's moving! You briefly wonder if medieval mornings are legally required to begin with someone yelling. Apparently. Yes, you drag yourself upright. Your body has reached a fascinating stage of exhaustion where everything hurts equally. Your feet, your shoulders, your back. Even muscles you didn't know existed have joined the protest. If someone asked you to point to a part of your body that didn't hurt, you'd probably need a few minutes to think about it. You grab your helmet, your spear, the last stubborn piece of yesterday's bread, and hurry toward the walls. Breakfast can happen while running. You've become surprisingly talented at that. Backslash. The atmosphere feels wrong. Not louder, quieter. The enemy camp is already awake. Rows of soldiers stand waiting. No one is cooking. No one is laughing. No one is wandering between tents. They're watching. Every pair of eyes is fixed on the castle. That makes your stomach tighten. Armies are rarely this quiet unless they've already made up their minds. Thomas joins you on the battlements. You hear it? Hear what? He doesn't answer. Instead, he points into the mist. You listen. At first, nothing. Then, creak. A long, groaning sound. Wood under immense pressure. Thud. Then another. Closer. The fog begins to part. Something massive emerges. Not a monster, though it certainly looks like one. A huge wooden frame mounted on wheels, covered with soaked animal hides to protect it from fire. Beneath the roof, a giant oak log hangs from thick ropes. Its iron-capped head swings gently with every movement. The battering ram. Every castle guard knows what it is. Nobody enjoys meeting one. The drums begin, slow, steady. Boom, boom, boom. The rhythm echoes through your chest. Lines of infantry march alongside the ram, shields raised, archers spread out behind them. Crossbowmen take positions. The siege tower you watched them build earlier begins rolling forward too. It moves painfully slowly, like an entire house deciding to go for a walk. You suddenly realize something unsettling. Every miserable day of guard duty, every hour spent practicing with your spear, every lecture from the captain, every freezing night on the walls, has been preparing you for the next few hours. This is the exam. There are no retakes. Oddly enough, the captain becomes calmer than you've ever seen him. No yelling, no insults, no sarcasm. Just clear, steady orders. Archers, they step forward. Wait, no one moves. Stone teams. You and several others gather beside piles of carefully stacked rock. Water crews. Buckets are distributed along the wall, not because you're planning to make tea, because fire is coming. The captain looks at every guard in turn. His eyes linger on each face. Some of these men have served beside him for 20 years, some only a few months. He nods once. Hold. That's all. No speech, no grand declaration, no promise that everyone will survive. Just one word. Sometimes. Leadership is simply sounding calmer than everyone else, even when you aren't. The ram reaches the outer gate. The soldiers beneath its roof begin swinging the giant log. Back, forward, boom! The sound is unbelievable. You don't merely hear it, you feel it. The entire gate shudders. Dust falls from the gatehouse ceiling. Birds explode into the air. The log swings again, back, forward, boom, again, again, again. The rhythm becomes relentless, like an angry heartbeat. The gate is built from thick oak reinforced with iron bands. It's enormously strong. But strength isn't magic. Everything eventually breaks if struck often enough. Your job is making sure that happens as slowly as possible. Drop! The captain points downward. You and the other guards heave the first stones over the battlements. Gravity immediately takes over. One rock crashes through the ram's wooden roof. Another bounces harmlessly into the mud. A third strikes a shield with a deafening crack. Below, chaos erupts. The attackers scatter. Some stumble, others push forward. The ram keeps moving. You quickly discover something historians rarely emphasize enough. Dropping heavy rocks accurately is surprisingly difficult, especially while people below are actively trying not to be where the rocks land. Thomas grunts as he shoves another stone over the edge. Smaller target than it looks. Very helpful. I thought so. Even now. Even with a battle raging beneath you. The two of you still find time for dry humor. Perhaps that's another survival skill, if you stop laughing entirely. Fear gets much louder. A shout erupts from the western wall. "Fire arrows!" You look just in time to see flaming arrows streak toward the siege tower. Hollywood loves this moment. One flaming arrow, instant inferno, everyone cheers. Reality, as usual, is more stubborn. Fresh green wood doesn't burn easily, neither do hides soaked in water. The first volley accomplishes very little, mostly smoke. The second does slightly better. The third finally catches a patch of dry timber near the roof. Tiny flames appear, not spectacular. Just enough. The defenders cheer anyway. Every small victory matters. Men carrying buckets rush toward the tower from the enemy camp. Now they're trying to save it. War often becomes strangely ordinary. One side starts a fire. The other side puts it out. Repeat until somebody runs out of walls. Suddenly, someone shouts from farther along the wall, "Ladders!" You spin around. Several scaling ladders have reached the battlements. Enemy soldiers begin climbing. Fast, much faster than you'd expected. One helmet appears above the wall. Then another, then a hand gripping the stone. This is the part every guard secretly fears, because now the wall isn't protecting you anymore. Now it's simply where the fighting happens. You rush toward the nearest ladder. A soldier is almost at the top. His eyes meet yours. For a split second, everything else disappears. The drums, the shouting, the arrows. The world shrinks to one frightened man climbing upward, and another frightened man trying to stop him. Neither of you chose this exact moment. History did. You thrust your spear. He raises his shield. The point glances away. Thomas arrives beside you. Together you push against the ladder. It wobbles, leans, then slowly tips backward. For one impossible moment, everyone on it hangs suspended. Then gravity remembers its job. The ladder crashes into the moat below. The splash is enormous. Thomas exhales. That'll ruin someone's morning. You stare at him. Really? What? That's what you've got? He shrugs. I panicked. Fair enough. By midday, you can barely hear yourself think. Everywhere, noise, hammering, shouting, arrows striking shields, stones smashing wood, the constant booming of the ram. The smell is even worse. Smoke, sweat, wet leather, burning pitch, fresh-cut timber, mud churned by hundreds of boots, the sharp metallic scent of blood. Your throat feels raw. Your eyes sting. You haven't noticed how thirsty you are until now. A young servant appears carrying a bucket of small ale. He's no older than 14. His hands are shaking. Still? He climbs the stairs anyway. One by one, guards take quick drinks before returning to their positions. You nod your thanks. He nods back, then hurries away for another bucket. Not everyone fights with weapons. Some fight with courage. Hour after hour. The ram keeps swinging. The gate keeps standing, scarred, splintered, groaning, but standing. The captain finally allows himself the smallest smile. Good oak, Thomas pats the wall affectionately. Good tree, you quietly add, very hard-working tree. Somewhere, centuries earlier, a tiny acorn began growing into that mighty oak. It had absolutely no idea its future career would involve absorbing thousands of impacts from a battering ram. Life is unpredictable. As evening approaches, a horn sounds from the enemy camp. Long, low. The attackers begin withdrawing. Slowly, reluctantly, the ram rolls backward. The ladders disappear, the archers retreat. No victory cries, no celebrations, just exhaustion on both sides. You lean against the battlements. Your arms tremble from lifting stones all day. Your voice is hoarse. Your hands are blistered again. You look down at the gate. It's cracked, scarred, bruised, but still closed. The captain joins you. For several moments, neither of you says anything. Finally, he rests one hand against the weathered oak. "Tomorrow," he says quietly. "We'll repair it. Because that's what castle guards do. Not heroes, not legends, just ordinary people who spend each day fixing whatever yesterday tried to destroy." You look out across the valley. The enemy camp is already rebuilding. So are you. Tomorrow, the siege will continue. But something has changed inside you. A week ago, you were counting the hours until your shift ended. Now, you're counting the walls that are still standing, and somehow, that feels like progress. So, you wake up. Again. Honestly, you're beginning to suspect immortality would be less exhausting. Every morning starts the same. Someone shouts, something hurts. And there's a new reason to climb several hundred stairs. Today, however, something feels different. Nobody is running. Nobody is yelling. The captain isn't already insulting someone's posture. That's unusual. In fact, it's deeply suspicious. You step outside the barracks. The courtyard is strangely quiet. Servants whisper instead of shouting. The blacksmith isn't hammering. Even the dogs seem confused. Thomas walks over carrying a wooden mug of small ale. He hands it to you. "You'll want this." "Why?" He points toward the eastern wall. "You should see." You climb the familiar spiral staircase. At this point, you could probably navigate it blindfolded. Not that you'd recommend trying. Halfway up, you pass fresh repair crews carrying beams of oak. Masons chip away at damaged stone. Carpenters replace shattered parapets. The castle is already healing. Castles, much like people, survive by repairing yesterday's wounds before tomorrow creates new ones. You emerge onto the battlements, then you stop. The enemy camp is gone. Not entirely. Scattered ashes remain where campfires once burned, broken wagon wheels, abandoned tents, a few dead horses awaiting burial. But the army itself has vanished beyond the distant hills. For several long seconds, nobody speaks. The silence feels almost unfamiliar. After days of horns, drums, arrows, and crashing stone, the absence of noise is almost louder. Thomas finally breaks it. "I miss the shouting." You stare at him. "No, you don't." "No," he smiles. "I really don't." Not every siege ended with a dramatic assault. In fact, many simply ended. Perhaps reinforcements arrived. Perhaps the attackers ran out of supplies. Perhaps disease spread through the camp. Perhaps another war demanded their attention somewhere else. Sometimes, the defenders simply proved too expensive to conquer. Maintaining a medieval army was astonishingly costly. Every soldier needed food. Every horse needed fodder. Weapons broke. Armor required repairs. Mercenaries expected payment. A siege could bankrupt even powerful rulers if it dragged on too long. Victory wasn't only about bravery, it was also about mathematics. Eventually, somebody's wallet surrendered before somebody's walls did. History can be wonderfully practical that way. The gates finally open, slowly, carefully. Not because anyone expects another attack, because nobody trusts an empty battlefield. Several scouts ride out first. Only after they return does the captain allow work crews beyond the walls. You join them. The countryside looks familiar and completely different. Fields have been trampled flat beneath thousands of boots. Fruit trees have been chopped down for firewood. Fence posts are gone. Wells have been damaged. One abandoned wagon lies tipped on its side, its contents scattered across the grass. A single child's shoe rests nearby. No one says anything. War leaves behind curious little reminders, not just broken swords, but ordinary things. A spoon, a blanket, a toy, a shoe. Tiny objects that quietly remind you someone planned to come home. History often records the names of kings. The land remembers everyone else. Your first assignment after surviving a siege? Cleaning. Of course. You had imagined something more heroic. Perhaps a ceremony? A medal. A heartfelt speech from the Lord. Instead, you're handed a shovel. Medieval castles generated astonishing amounts of work after a siege. Broken arrows litter the fields. Damaged wagons block roads. Collapsed sections of wall need clearing. The moat must be inspected, supplies inventoried, tools repaired, livestock counted, the dead buried. It's exhausting, necessary, unavoidable. You spend the morning collecting arrows. Some can be reused, others become firewood. Nothing useful is wasted. Thomas discovers an enemy shield lodged in a hedge. "Souvenir?" he asks. The captain walks past without slowing. "Work," Thomas sighs. That answers that. By afternoon, Martin finally limps back into the courtyard. The crossbow wound in his shoulder is heavily bandaged. He moves slowly, very slowly. The guards cheer when they see him, not loudly, just enough. Someone tosses him a piece of bread. Another offers a mug of ale. Thomas walks over. "Still ugly," Martin grins. "Still alive. Fair trade." There it is again. That strange medieval sense of humor. Not because life was easy, because it wasn't. Sometimes laughter becomes another piece of armor, one that weighs nothing. That evening, something extraordinary happens. The Lord orders a feast, not the extravagant sort reserved for visiting kings, but generous enough. Fresh bread, roasted mutton, cheese, apples, even a little wine for the officers. The guards receive larger portions than usual. You sit shoulder to shoulder with men you've watched freeze beside, trained beside, and fought beside. No one talks much at first. Everyone is too busy eating. Real meat has a remarkable ability to silence conversation eventually. Thomas raises his mug. "To walls," Martin raises his. "To gates." Someone farther down the table adds, "To whoever invented bread." A chorus of agreement follows. Honestly, that person deserves recognition. You raise your own mug. "To tomorrow." Everyone nods. Because tomorrow is never guaranteed, which makes surviving long enough to complain about it feel oddly satisfying. As the feast winds down, musicians quietly begin playing in the great hall. Nothing grand, just a fiddle, a pipe, a drum. The melody drifts gently across the courtyard. You lean back against the cool stone wall. Above you, the stars slowly appear. The same stars people looked upon 1,000 years ago. Kings saw them, peasants saw them, monks, blacksmiths, children, castle guards. History tends to remember extraordinary people, the conquerors, the queens, the brilliant generals, the infamous villains. But castles weren't kept standing by famous names. They survived because ordinary people woke before dawn, pulled on cold boots, climbed endless stairs, stood watch through rain and snow, shared stale bread, repaired broken gates, buried friends. then got up the next morning and did it all again. People exactly like you. So, let's be honest. Would you have survived? Not just the battle, the boredom, the freezing nights, the aching feet, the endless drills, the smoky kitchens, the lice, the mud, the smell, the uncertainty. Could you stand on a lonely wall for 12 hours knowing absolutely nothing might happen? Or knowing something terrible might? Most of us imagine ourselves charging heroically into history. History usually asks something less glamorous. Can you simply keep going? Day after day. Without applause, without recognition, without certainty that anyone will remember your name. That's what made castle guards remarkable. Not because they were fearless, because they were ordinary. And they kept showing up anyway. The captain approaches quietly. For the first time since you've met him, he isn't shouting. He looks out across the repaired gate, then toward the distant hills where the enemy disappeared. You did well, you blink. Surely you misheard. I'm sorry, sir? I said... He clears his throat, clearly uncomfortable with compliments. Don't make me repeat myself. Then he walks away. Thomas nearly drops his mug. Did he just praise you? I think so. We should write this down. It may never happen again. The two of you laugh. A real laugh. The kind that only arrives after surviving something difficult. And that's the curious thing about history. No matter how dramatic yesterday was, someone still has to stand the next watch. Someone still has to open the gates at sunrise. Someone still has to greet the merchants, question the travelers, and complain about the weather. Life goes on, stone by stone, shift by shift, generation by generation. So tonight, as you settle into your own warm bed, wrapped in clean blankets, with electric lights, running water, and the comforting certainty that no one is about to wheel a battering ram toward your front door, take a quiet moment to appreciate just how extraordinary ordinary life has become. Because for one medieval castle guard, a peaceful, uneventful day wasn't boring. It was the greatest luxury in the world. Sleep well. You've earned it. And so, your watch is finally over. The spear has been returned to the rack. The heavy helmet has been set aside. The castle gates are closed for the night, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you can simply rest. If you've stayed with me all the way through this journey, thank you. It truly means a lot. Whether you're listening from a cozy bedroom in Canada, a quiet apartment in the United States, a cabin in Norway, or somewhere else entirely, I'm grateful you chose to spend part of your evening traveling back through history with me. I hope this story helped you slow down for a little while. Maybe it helped you unwind after a long day. Maybe it gave you a few fascinating facts to think about. Or maybe, if everything went according to plan, you've already drifted off to sleep somewhere around the part where Thomas was arguing with a battering ram. If so, I suppose you'll never hear me say this. For thousands of ordinary men who stood atop medieval castle walls, life wasn't filled with glorious victories or songs written in their honor. It was built from small routines, climbing endless stairs, standing watch through freezing rain, sharing rough bread with friends, repairing broken gates, laughing at terrible jokes because laughter was lighter to carry than fear. History often remembers the names of kings and conquerors, but the world they ruled rested on the shoulders of people whose names disappeared long ago, people who never expected to become legends. People who simply did their duty, one sunrise at a time. And perhaps that's one of the most comforting lessons history can offer. Most of life isn't made of extraordinary moments. It's made of ordinary ones. Making breakfast, helping a friend, showing up for work, looking after your family. Doing the next right thing even when no one is watching. Those quiet moments rarely appear in history books, but they're often the moments that shape history the most. So the next time your alarm clock feels cruel, or your commute feels endless, or your job seems repetitive, just remember, at least nobody is asking you to spend 12 hours on a freezing stone wall while wondering if someone is about to launch a 1-ton rock through your roof. Perspective can be wonderfully comforting. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel reach more people who love relaxing history. And if you're new here, and you'd like more peaceful trips into the past, consider subscribing and joining us for future bedtime adventures through forgotten worlds and extraordinary lives. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which historical job should we experience next? A Roman legionary stationed on a lonely frontier? A Viking farmer trying to survive a brutal winter? A lighthouse keeper battling endless storms? Or perhaps the miserable life of a pirate's cabin boy? Your suggestions often inspire future episodes, and I read as many of them as I can. Until next time, thank you for spending this evening with me. Take care of yourself, get some well-earned rest, and as the castle grows quiet, as the torches burn low, as the last guard slowly walks the moonlit wall, you can let your own thoughts drift away. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and leave the Middle Ages behind. Good night. Sleep well. And I'll see you in the next journey through history.